Good evening, everybody, and good morning for Professor Dibyesh and others who are from outside the country. This talk is specifically upon the issues of the Muslims inside India. Issues has been there throughout the country and all over the world, but we are specifically dealing with the questions of Muslim existence in India, basically in this context of this anti-constitutional act which has been passed inside this the country, the parliament, and the protests which happened just following that. There has been so many dissents from different corners of the country and different intellectuals and sections, especially the marginalized sections inside the country. So it would be a very honor for us to hear from one of the eminent scholars in the world regarding the Indian context. Professor Dibyesh is here, and most of those who is already participating in this webinar already knows about Professor Dibyesh. I am not someone who can very much explain about him. You already know him, so I'll just introduce him as the professor of Westminster, London. And he has been working on the relations between this majority-minority concepts, and especially upon the Tibet. One of his famous book is on Tibet, and he has been the associate professor in the Westminster and the head of international relations, Department of Politics and International Relations at Westminster. And I think that is enough for this time being, and we'll start with the session. So the session will be around 40 minutes plus or minus 5 to 10, and then we'll have a Q&A session following that. Over to Professor Dibyesh.
Okay, thank you, Irfan, very much for this. When you were introducing me, I remember 2 or 3 things. I still have to update my bio on my website.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm now a full professor for 3 years, but my website is 5 years old. That's one. And the politics department, which you mentioned, now I'm head of School of Social Sciences. The reason I mentioned this is because this is what, sometimes our life takes on in different direction, but our online presence or online identity might still be something that's old.
Exactly.
Now, I connect that to the subject I want to talk about. Okay, I understand that most of you, or many of you, are from India, and many of you have Muslim identity. So possibly what I'm talking about, you know more than I do in any case, right? But I'm also aware through the names and everything that a couple of you are not from India, including I could see a friend of mine who's from Senegal. So she's there, right? So they're different people. So I'll pitch my talk balancing between those of you who have experienced living as Muslims in India, those who have interest in majority-minority relation in general, and those who have general interest in the subject, right? So I'll balance this. Sure. Now, the reason I think is in the UK context, or in the Western context, the dominant image of India is still, or until a year ago, not now, until a year ago, still was of, that multicultural India, where you could have a Sikh prime minister, a Muslim president, a Roman Catholic politician as a very powerful one, Sonia Gandhi, you have a judge who's Dalit, all of that. And somehow a land of yoga, land of Holi with colorful things, a land of Eid where people sort of exchange greetings, right? Now, if you speak to still a number of people in the West, they'll hold on to that image of India today, even though the reality of India is changing rapidly. Now, see, the reason I'm connecting that to my own identity, that my own online identity can be different from my real ones. It has evolved. So in Indian context, I think what has happened is we know the ways in which today, speak to most people in India. I don't think we would, most people from India or related to India, I'd struggle to imagine a situation where you have actually a Muslim president. Okay, We never had a Muslim prime minister, note, because presidents are not important. Prime ministers are. So in any case, we are not talking about a radically different situation where we had Muslim prime minister or a Christian prime minister or a Buddhist president. No, we always had problems of Islamophobia. We always had a problem of majoritarianism, but the extent is different, right? So even the symbolic situation of a Muslim president, or for that matter, a Christian, a foreign-born Christian prime minister, I think will be an impossibility, or not improbability, right? So imagine a situation where 7 years ago we could talk of something else, and now we all know that even if opposition comes to power, Congress kind of opposition, or for that matter, most opposition party kind of opposition, they would still adopt some kind of soft Hindutva image, right? They will adopt it because, and they will tell minorities, both Muslim and Christian, that for your safety, it's important that we have soft Hindutva image, because we need to appeal. They'll not use the word appease. Notice, in Indian context, appeasement is a term not used by political parties for the dominant community, which is Savarna Hindus. Appeasement is a term they use for minorities, largely Muslim minority. So for instance, if any political party talks of equal rights or privileges, not privilege, equal rights, or talks of discrimination against minorities, they'll be accused of appeasing. But you talk of majority rights or looking after interests of the Savarna, who are not technically majority, remember, but they're dominant. Dominant, that's not appeasement. So a political party going to Shahi Imam or Imam Bukhari of Jama Masjid, who in any case, let's not talk about him. I don't want to upset people if you respect him. But imagine people going to him and him saying that Muslims of India should vote for XYZ party. People will say it's appeasement, unless he does that for the BJP, by the way. Then BJP will not say it's appeasement, but anyway, appeasement. But people going to all these, Swamis and the Acharyas and these Babas, right? All of them, and getting their support is not seen as appeasement. So we're dealing with an odd context here. And I'll say that it's a context which is, and I've said that in past also, and I'm not exaggerating. The situation in India today, right, is one similar to the situation in Germany in 1933-34. I'm not saying 39. There's no world war. I'm not saying there's actual genocide right now. The Holocaust started, but it's a situation of 1934-35 Germany, and I'll explain why I'm arguing that that's the situation, right? So coming back to what I started by pointing out, that the reality of India was one always of a messy one: majoritarianism, casteism, Brahmanical supremacy, misogyny, homophobia, right? All of this was a problem. So it's not new. But what's new, of course, is the push in one direction where it almost becomes impossible for us to imagine an alternative. An alternative where Muslims and Christians would have equal rights as citizens and not minority protection, right? So in my own work, and I would, whenever I speak to people outside India also, let's say Muslim majority context, be it Pakistan, Bangladesh, or Indonesia, Malaysia, we see similar kinds of problems. There, what you have is people who focus on protection of minority. The fact is, democracies are not about protection of minority. Democracies are about rights of minorities. So for instance, let's say in your context, and in many people's context there, in Indian context, if BJP promises protection of religious minorities, right? And says, we are not going to kill you, do your work, you'll have a right to worship and all of that. Imagine the situation. And so long as you respect India as a Hindu nation, right? Imagine they do that situation. And that's what they say they are doing, right? They always say, oh, respect our identity and we will leave you alone. We'll protect you. Not that they even do protection, but at least they claim they'll do it. That is still not democracy. That's not democracy, because if the moment Muslims or Christians in India assert themselves as citizens, they'll be told, go back, right? So at best, Muslims and Christians, or any religious minority in India, can expect under a Hindu nation, at best, a protection, but not rights as citizens. The rights as citizens would be for one of you, and I say for one of you because I'm not an Indian citizen, by the way, right? I'm a British citizen. Now, and that leads to different kinds of problems. But for one of you to say, look, no, I not only I don't believe in BJP or whatever, I do believe in rights for all, and I support Kashmiri movement for self-determination, if you're Kashmiri, right? Or not even Kashmiri. Or you say, I do not believe in Hindu nation. I do not even believe in soft Hindutva. And I do believe that we need to fight for this right. Without you fearing incarceration, jail, without you fearing your knock on your door, without you fearing your family being intimidated, without you fearing that in your job or within your university or within your school, you'll be told of, or you're pro-Pakistani, you're a Pakistani, right? Without, look, for someone to joke, oh, a Pakistani to me is different from someone joking to an Indian Muslim, you're a Pakistani, right? There's a huge difference. Now, so in all of that context, what we find, of course, is the situation in India is changing. The situation of Muslims in particular, and Christians too, is highly precarious. So precarity is a concept that a lot of scholars have used, including Judith Butler, American philosopher, right? She talks of precarity in context particularly of migrants, but also of Palestinians vis-a-vis Israel, right? So she talks of how certain lives can be mourned and certain lives don't get mourned. So if 10 Palestinians die, no one outside Palestine will mourn, right? But 2 Israelis get killed, there's a mourning, right? Similar. So for instance, if a soldier dies in Indian context or a Pakistan context, there's mourning by the state. Everyone says it's bad. But Kashmiri gets killed, or Pashtun gets killed, or Baloch gets killed, then ideas, no, they get killed because they deserve it, right? So what happens is, and okay, can you see a calendar on my, you can see a calendar, right? Some of you. That calendar, for those of you who know Kashmir would know, but imagine this kind of calendar, right? A Kashmiri person disappeared. They're not dead, they're not alive. They've been disappeared, right? So around, let's say, 8 to 10,000 Kashmiris have been disappeared by the Indian state since 1990s. Now, so this is by the Association for Parents of Disappeared Persons, Parveena Hangar and others lead it. Now think of it, don't think of Kashmiris. You don't care of Kashmiris, forget them, right? Think of Indians who, if they're told, but 8,000 people have been disappeared, or you don't believe in 8,000 figure, fine, 4,000 have been disappeared, right? People have been disappeared, the families are still waiting. How would it make you feel if your close family member was disappeared and you could not even mourn, you could not bury them, you could not cremate them, you could not live at peace knowing they're dead or alive? Most people like to say, no, that's not right, right? It's not good. Most people will say that. Now, how come so many Indians, even when they know that Kashmiris have been brutalized, right? Forget occupation part, right? Political, but they've been brutalized. There have been cases of mass rape. There have been cases of individual rape. There have been blinding. There have been disappearance. Why would so many Indians accept? They'd accept because according to them, Kashmiris are not human beings. Kashmiris are separatists, terrorists, and therefore deserve everything they get, right? So the idea is there's a dehumanization of Kashmir because Kashmiris asked for it. I say asked for it, inverted comma. Now, whenever there's a case of, let's say, bear that in mind. So what's happening, of course, is through different processes of nationalism, Indians, a lot of Indians, not all, do not feel much empathy for Kashmiris because Kashmiris, according to them, deserve it because Kashmiris are not full human beings. And they're not full human beings because they're separatists, terrorists, extremists, blah, 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 right? That's how it functions. So the process, therefore, is of dehumanization. So bear that in mind, the concept dehumanization. It's a very important concept. Now come to the context of Dalits in the Indian caste system. In caste system in India, but also in other countries now, to some extent. A caste system where Dalits they die in various forms, right? Be it through manual scavenging, be it when they get killed by the Savarna people, whatever, right? In every situation, Dalits get more killed than the Brahmanical caste, right? But a lot of people who are Savarna would accept it on the ground that, but they're poor, they're dirty, they deserve it. So the almost a sense of blaming the victim for deserving it, right? Now, third example I'll use is of a lot of time where you have got what we call rape culture. Rape culture would be where you blame women for victimization. So a woman gets raped or a girl gets raped, right? They said, but why did they get raped? But what was she doing at night? What was she doing with a boyfriend? Why did she have a boyfriend? What was she going out? Why was she wearing this clothes? Why is she online? Do you see? So a lot of blame is shift onto the woman. So this rape culture, which is of blaming the woman, is similar to the nationalism culture, which is you blame the minorities, you blame those who oppose the nation. So now, where does see example of Kashmir, example of rape and rape culture, example of how racism functions in the West, right? I mean, we talk of Islamophobia, but the deep-rooted racism in the West is even longer than Islamophobia, right? So why this whole debate about Black Lives Matter? Black Lives Matter is not that white lives don't matter. It's just that white lives have always mattered and they continue to matter. So we need to remind that Black lives matter too. So that's why Black lives matter. So now in Indian context in particular, or in context of various countries where religious minorities get brutalized, right? Brutalized at worst or patronized at best. Patronized is that protection thing. Koi baat nahi, we will take care of you. But keep quiet. Vote for people we tell you to vote for, right? Or don't even think of voting. Paternalism. So the range of politics in India around religious minorities has functioned in a way. The range shifts from patronizing, vote for us, we'll protect you, to one, don't vote for us, we don't need your vote, and we're not going to protect you. If anything, in fact, we are going to exterminate you, right? So from the Congress center-left version, the paternalism part, to the right-wing version, which is at best, you all, and I say you all Muslims are Hindus. Why? Because Hindu is a way of life, right? That's how what they would say. And then the range of that, of course, is also the extermination part. Now, how does Hindu nationalism function? So, this is how it is happening in India. Hindu nationalism functions, and some of you would have been there at the talk I had done last time 3 years ago in Hyderabad, or you might have read my work, followed it. Some of you might not. So I'll just summarize the kind of work I've done, and that will explain the context why, from the very beginning of my work around Hindu nationalism. And remember, for me, it's not a research project. It's not a research project that I've done it and that's done, right? My idea is because connected to my strong belief in democracy. So when I support something, I have solidarity with people, it's because I strongly believe in democracy. So the title of the talk, and I know some people had the question that why is the title Being Muslim, right? Good day, because I'm not a Muslim. And I'll never claim to be a Muslim because I'm not a Muslim. And I'll never claim to experience what Muslims in India experience, because I cannot claim to be a religious minority in a majoritarian context. But I can claim to have some experience of being marginalized, and that largely comes from my own sexuality, right? So I have a queer sexuality. So I'm not saying it's the same, but I can say that I know what it feels to be invisibilized, you don't exist, or be told you can exist, just keep quiet and don't be too flamboyant, right? Don't be public. Or third, you're unnatural, you're criminal, you are someone who's polluting the wider society, right? Now, of course, there are different identities, right? When I talk sexuality and religion, they're very different things. Because religious minorities can also be homophobic, no doubt. And homosexual people also can be majoritarian. So all of that functions. So I'm not someone who would say, oh, as a queer person, I fully understand. No. But all I'm saying is, given a situation of growing fascism like in India, it's important that all kinds of minorities, be it religious, secular, socialist, right? Or all kinds of sexual minorities, class, whatever. So all kinds of marginalized people have to work with each other, right? So a few years ago when SIO invited me to Hyderabad, and I mentioned that in my talk, then I'll repeat it. I had people saying, why are you going to SIO? Do you know that they're connected to Jamati, they're connected to this, that? I said, okay, fine, that's good. And I remember saying to Jassim then that the fact that they have invited me, who's very publicly queer, I'm sure they're also being asked that question, that why inviting a homosexual person to give a talk, right? So frankly, beyond a point, we should not give a damn to those kinds of people who would want, let's say, let's talk of rights of Muslims, only Muslims should talk of it. Let's talk of sexual minority, only sexual minority talk of it. No, we need to talk of it so long as I'm not talking over you and not talking over me, right? So that's the context. So the way in which Hindu national functions is very clear, and I've said that again and again. There is no way in which Hindu nationalism can become accommodative of religious minorities as equals. So for Hindu nationalism, and this is a saying that they would say, right, and some of you would know, some of you would not, Musalman ke Dohistan, Pakistan ya Kabristan. That's a saying, right? If you have not heard, that's because you don't speak Hindi, maybe, or Urdu, but that's a saying. And remember, all my insights when I wrote my book did not, none of my insight came from talking to any Muslim person, by the way, or talking to any socialist person or communist person. Okay, I did talk, right? But all my insights came 100% from talking to Hindu nationalists themselves. Not those who claim to be Hindu nationalists, by the way, but those who are Hindu nationalists. Bajrang Dal, VHP, they were my primary source. I spent time with them. RSS, yes, I spent time with RSS. Now I can't, but in the past I could. Now this is the disadvantage of having Facebook, by the way. Now with Facebook and all of the social media, if I go to any person, imagine a Bajrang Dal person or Bajrang Dal people in Ayodhya that, I want to talk to you. They will say, what is your Facebook ID? Give me your ID. I want to be a friend. I say, okay. And the moment they become a friend, I get exposed. But thankfully, I did research in pre-social media era. Still, the problem was internet. So in Bombay and Delhi, RSS refused to speak to me properly. Because they would always take my visiting card, Google for it, and they said, Acha, aap to hamare against likh rahe hain, so you're writing against us. This when I hardly wrote against them at that point in time. But I did sign all the petitions, after Gujarat pogrom about that. But in smaller towns, thankfully, they did not check. So there's it. But by the way, I have to make it clear, I never lied to them. I never lied that I'm Hindu nationalist. Why would I lie? I always said that I have a Hindu background, because again, I have given up on religion, right? But I have not adopted another religion. For them, therefore, unless you adopt Christianity or Islam or whatever, you're still a Hindu according to them, though I never identified as that. I said, I'm from this background, this is my name, this is my father's name, mother's name kind of thing. By the way, they never bother about mother's name. That's how misogyny also functions there. Though I wanted to use my mother's name first, but they would always ask my father's name. Fine, I used that. I told them, I said, I'm curious about what you do. So what insight I gained was Hindu nationalism is fascism, and I'll explain why fascism. Maybe doing question answer. If you can want to ask why it's fascism, why not something else? Is it an exaggeration? I would say no. Hindu nationalism, in my own work, I've looked at is in terms of it's based on fear. It's not based on confidence. It's based on fear. It's fear of, and they say it in the pamphlets, leaflets. Most of you who are Muslim, you cannot do that research. You'll never be allowed to do that research because you can't get that access. For me, the sadness is how come more people with Hindu names did not do that kind of research. Now, some have done it. I'm not saying I'm the only one who did it, right? There are various people who have done it. And frankly, being based in London, I have a lot more privileges. Hindu nationalists cannot get me removed from my university job, right? They can threaten my family, which they do, by the way, from time to time. They can spread rumors about me, which they do from time to time. But I don't depend on them for livelihood. But I can understand today in India, even for a genuine secular Hindu name person, it's very difficult to do the kind of research which I did, right? We know what happens to activists. We know what happens to people. So it's not only Muslims, but also non-Muslims. Right? So the way fear functions is Hindu nation has, and according to Hindu women, Hindu families, Hindu community, Hindu nation, and the world, right? That's how they said. Every level has fear from Muslims, Christians, communists, secularists. That's it. And in the past, they used to talk of westernized media or media. Now they don't talk of media because, of course, media is largely in their pocket. So they don't talk of media, but they do still talk of westernized media, by the way, or Western media. So New York Times or Guardian, when it talks of human rights abuses in Pakistan, they'll say yes, good. But when it talks of human rights abuses in Kashmir or in India, they say it's bad, it's Western, right? But largely Muslims, Christians, communists, and seculars. Now, they see Muslims, Christians, and communists as one similar kind of enemy. That all three are influenced by foreign ideology, according to them. So Islam is foreign because of Mecca and Medina there. Christianity is foreign according to them because it's somehow connected all to Rome, right? Though there are fewer Christians in Rome than there are in India, right? But that's how they would see. And third, communism, because they see communism as not Indian, but as coming from outside. All three. Secularism, according to them, is essentially, or secularists are those Hindu Indians who believe in equality of all people. and are therefore the enemies. So imagine if I was Hindu and because I'm secularist, right? If I was in India, they would see people like myself as the fourth enemy, right? Because the idea is people like me who would believe that, of course, you should not commit human rights abuses against any religious minorities. You should treat all of them equally, and all of that, they become the enemy. But they've been very clear, and they would say the slogan is "Pehle Kasai, fir Isai." Kasai is the term, the butcher term they use for Muslims. First the Muslims, and then the Christians and communists. So it's not a coincidence that they target Kerala particularly in various ways. I know in Kerala also the relation between communists and the Muslims and the Christians might not be all of camaraderie. I know there's a lot of tension, but for Hindu nationalists, they're all the same. So this is where I would always advise people who are following certain kind of politics in India in different ways, that while you may have problems with each other, you are all the same for the Hindu nationalists. Let's say, take examples, but Muslims are the clear enemy number one. Now, take example CA, the CA, the Amendment Act, which was a bill earlier. Of course, you'd think that they're privileging Christians or Buddhists over Muslims. And the reason for that is very simple. They know that there are hardly any Christians in the neighboring countries who are going to seek refuge here, number one. Number two, this way, at least they dilute the criticism in the West. So the reason they have gone to say that, oh, we care about all minorities except Muslims, because Muslims are not a minority kind of thing, that we care for everyone except Muslims, is because they do not want, they want to play to the gallery, Islamophobia gallery in the outside world also. They've never cared about Christians. And we know in Karnataka, we know in Northeast, we know, in fact, in Orissa, the key target for, especially in Arunachal Pradesh, for instance, right, or Nagaland, the key target for Hindutva are not Muslims, they're Christians. And so that's how it functions. So always bear in mind that while many of you are Muslims might think, oh, why are we being targeted? What about Christian? Never think of what about. That what about is what they want you to think about. Right? Oh, but what about communists? They have suppressed us there and here. Yes, they have suppressed you. The way Muslim rulers have suppressed communists, right? Think of Iran. In case of Iran, the first people Iranian regime went after in 1979 after were their own allies. Iranian revolution was not only a revolution of what called Islamist. Iranian revolution involved feminists. It involved leftists. But the first thing that regime did was went against the feminists and the communists. So, right, so I'm not, and this is where I have to make it, I'm someone who does not glamorize any one kind of identity politics. That's not what I do. What I do is look at a particular phenomenon, in this case, majoritarian nationalism, and look at how they're functioning. So in this case, they function by enemy creation. So Muslims, so being Muslim in India today is being conforming to the image of what I use the term the Muslim, the stereotype of Muslim. Right? So the Muslim in India today, so Muslims in India today are being reduced to being the Muslim, which is an imaginary category. And that the Muslim is one of a particular kind, anti-national, anti-Hindu, right? Supporter of Pakistan, dirty, fanatic, extremist, cruel, weak, strong. See, weak and strong are opposite, but both of them are included. They live in ghettos. They are vote en bloc, so en masse. They have no identity, right? So everything negative. So being Muslim in India, therefore, is one where Muslims are being reduced to certain stereotype of what Muslims are. Right? Now, a number of you, and I say even you, because many of you, Muslims would live in ghettos in India. And again, I have used this example with some of you would be, but I'll use this example. My sister, she is a medical doctor in Ranchi. Ranchi is in Jharkhand, right? Now, she bought a flat. Again, she's Savarna, privileged class. She buys a flat in a colony. She buys a new flat and wants to give it for rent to her doctor friend, who happens to be a Muslim. And why give it to a Muslim friend? Because that doctor friend wants to get out of the ghetto. A middle class person wants to live in a middle class area. So my sister, right, she's the owner of the flat and the doctor, and she's a well-known doctor there. Now she goes and says, "Oh, this friend of mine, he's going to take it. In fact, I have bought the flat so that he can get it." And immediately the property agent says, no, you can't do that. She said, how can I not do it? It's my property. She said, it's your property, but the Residents Welfare Association, which is often a Savarna kind of body, right? They will not allow. She said, but who are they not to allow? This is my flat. And what's wrong? Then, of course, remember, they have to portray how, look, he's a Muslim, he's a doctor, his wife is a doctor, family is a doctor kind of thing. And so they had to say, look, how he's like everyone else. And the response was not to say much to my sister, because my sister was like, I will give it to him, regardless of what you say. The property agent calls the doctor, Muslim doctor friend of hers, and says, sir, you can come here, but imagine you have family and you have children. They'll have to live here. And what would happen to them? Right? Threat. What happens? That doctor friend cannot move into my sister's flat, even though my sister wants to give it to him. Doctor friend stays in a largely Muslim colony, which is largely middle class but ghettoized. Now, so see, the ghettoization is not a choice. I don't think anyone would want to live in ghetto. Or most people would not want to live in. You have to live in ghetto because you do not get place elsewhere, like in this case I'm giving. But you also live in ghetto because you fear, like in Ahmedabad context after 2002, a number of middle-class Muslims move to Muslim areas, which are ghettos, because they only feel secure there. See, injustice, discrimination that's imposed on Muslims through fear, intimidation, riots, pogrom, passing of leaflets, not buying things because you're a Muslim seller, right? All of that. So Muslim behavior in response to Hindu nationalist intimidation is then presented as natural to Muslims. See, so what you are forced to do, then you get blamed for doing that. So a lot of stories I would get is, these Muslims, akele rehte hain, gande rehte hain, apne mein rehte hain. Right? They live together, they live on their own, they don't want to interact with us. But in all the cases I've experienced, and you would know, you are living in certain context where you do not get an option. We know in cases of, ordinary people or middle class. I'm talking upper middle class. I'm talking of Saif Ali Khan kind of, the Bollywood actor kind of thing. They also don't get accommodation in the places they want to get, right? They might own a house. They can own a house, but they can't own a flat. And imagine a situation where a multi-millionaire actor can own a house, can buy 10 bungalows, they'll get that, but they can't buy a flat within a context. What does it tell you? It tells you that regardless of a class position, regardless of a caste position, whether you are Savarna Muslim or you are a Pasmanda, right? I'm sure there are a lot of differences. Most Muslims who get killed, lynched, would be Pasmanda, right? Would we be coming from lower caste? So I'm not denying that there are no differences amongst Muslims. But the fact is, for Hindu nationalists, all Muslims are the same. You might argue, whether Shia is this, or true Muslim, not Muslim, or Ahmadis are not Muslims. You can have endless arguments. The fact of the matter is, for Hindu nationalists, all Muslims are the same. Because being Muslim in India today is being the Jewish person, being the Jew in 1930s Germany, which is you're treated as very powerful and dangerous. You're also treated as dirty and weak, who will weaken the society. By the way, with the Jewish example, if you look at the cartoons, the anti-Semitic cartoons, they would portray the Jews as very powerful, very rich, capitalist, but also Jews as very communist. So Jews were seen as both communist leaders and capitalist leaders. They were seen as hyper-capitalist, hyper-communist. They were seen as taking away our women, seducing our women, raping our women. All of that which is there. So being Muslim in India today, therefore, is being a Jew in 1930s Germany. So what to expect? Expectation is stereotyping. Expectation is marginalization. Expectation is targeting. Expectation is economic boycott. Expectation is you can only have safety if you live amongst your own. Expectation is you have to be visible, you have to look Muslim, you have to be Muslim and identified. Expectation is if your colleagues joke about you or ask you, so do you still eat beef? Or what kind of biryani you eat? Now, of course, I might like biryani, but that is maybe, but I don't need to say, but I'm sure those of you who are minority would know what jokes are jokes and what jokes are not jokes, right? And what jokes are not jokes, but you have to treat it as joke, because if you don't, then you'll get a breakdown. If you're working as a journalist right, or a scholar, and your colleague said, oh, what do your people think? And we're talking every now and then, what do your people think? And your people means Muslims. And you have no option sometimes not to say that's fuck. Sorry. Apologies, because I think there's a child in this, I'll not say it. You can't say F off, right? You can't, sorry, because I could see a child there. You can't say F off. You can't say, who are you to ask me? You have to say, you have to smile and laugh, right? So being Muslim in India today is being fitting into the stereotype that Hindu nationalists have for you, which ranges from colorful, silent, clean, docile minority who doesn't raise the head even if you get abused, right? To the ones who raise the head, so beat Sharjil or beat anyone else who raises the head, right? And raises, forget Kashmir, raises, and I'll cover Kashmir during question answer if you're interested. But even you raise within the constitution, which is what CA protest did, you still get seen as anti-national. And why is that happening? That's happening because Hindu nationalism has created a situation in India, or is creating a situation in India, which is of one leader, one party, one nation. If you criticize Modi, you're criticizing India, right? So now, people will say, but Indira Gandhi was similar. I have no doubt Indira Gandhi had similar authoritarian personality. But Modi's authoritarianism is not a personality authoritarianism. It's an organizational authoritarianism. And that's the difference between Indira Gandhi and Modi. So I have to be careful because many of you are Indian citizens, so I don't want you to be in trouble. So I'll be careful here how to present it. Indira Gandhi, once she is not in the picture, that authoritarianism largely disappears, right? But if Narendra Modi disappears for whatever reason, including loss of election, I'm also seeing the time, right? Loses the election, that will not be gone because Narendra Modi is simply a figurehead for RSS, Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, the fascist organization. If not Modi, they'll have Amit Shah. If not Amit Shah, they'll have Yogi Adityanath. If not Yogi Adityanath, they'll have someone else. So Adi Prachi or whatever. So we are dealing with a more long-term vicious thing, the way in which Nazism had functioned. Yes, it was very much oriented around Hitler, but Hitler was not only Hitler. Hitler had a big organization. So that's what we have to bear in mind, right? So being Muslim in India today means, therefore, facing possible genocide. I'm not being sensationalist here that you are going to face genocide or Muslims are going to face, not at all. But we have to remember that the real possibility of genocide is one end of the environment created where genocide becomes possible, right? So the environment in India is today where genocide is becoming increasingly possible. Now, does it suit, again, that's question answer. Does it suit BJP to commit genocide? What will it gain from genocide? I don't think it suits the interest to commit genocide right now. But they have created an environment where small scale pogroms become very easy. Not only Delhi. Delhi was a pogrom. We know it, right? It's largely anti-Muslim violence. That's why it's pogrom. But even if we know it's 60 people, but even if 600, do you really think that a lot of people in India would have opposed it? I don't think so. If it was 6,000, I still don't think so. So this is what I mean, that they can switch on the tap and switch off the tap. And that is why the reason in the title we have genocide is because it's a possibility. And what to do about that possibility? Does it mean that Muslims have no option? Jinnah was right. Muslims should go to Pakistan? No. In fact, even the Jinnah was right statement, which a lot of time I know comes from frustration, is not only flawed, but quite irritating. I'll tell you why it's irritating to me. Jinnah's vision was Muslims and Hindus are two distinct nations. They can't live together. They should live broadly. That's what it ended up, right? They should live separately. It's not that if you're a minority, you can live as equal. So Jinnah's vision is where, well, Muslims can only be safe if they're in majority. In which case, Hindus and Christians will get discriminated against. They'll have all kinds of blasphemy case against them. They'll be lynched. They'll be killed. But it's okay so long as Muslims are safe. And that's what the ideology is. If anything, the way I would see is Hindutva ideology is similar to Pakistani ideology, which is Hindus and Muslims can't live together in peace. So the only way they can live is either minorities get exterminated Kabristan, right? But you'll not even get Kabristan, by the way, because they'll say, oh, Kabristan takes a lot of space, we don't have it, so you should be cremated. I mean, that's how it is. Sorry, I'm making jokes about death, but that's how they function. The only way I can manage this kind of intense work is by making jokes, by the way. So please don't mind that, right? So even Kabristan is not being provided. Pakistan, right? Let's send them to Pakistan. If really Muslims in India say, fine, we are going to Pakistan, and somehow we're going out, they'll not let you go, because that will bring bad image. In a way, Indian Muslims are essential to the project of Hindutva because they need you to constantly demonize you and scapegoat you. Take example, Tablighi Jamaat thing happened, right? And I'm someone who has said, and I've written in a newspaper, in fact, it's in the news for Pakistan newspaper, right? Now, of course, I'll give you an example. I wrote in a newspaper that asked me to write on COVID and Islamophobia in India. It happened to be a Pakistani newspaper. I did not think 5 times, it's a Pakistani newspaper. But when I shared that article, some of my good friends from India said, but why is it in Pakistani newspaper? And I thought, okay, is that the important part, or is the important part what I'm arguing, which is essentially scapegoating? Tablighi Jamaat gathering, we know, was criticized in Malaysia, was criticized in Pakistan, was criticized in India, right? And whatever you wish, it was not a very responsible thing to do at one point in time. I know that it was not easy, but it was not responsible. Fine. Do you criticize it for being irresponsible? Not illegal, irresponsible. But it's not a conspiracy. If it was a conspiracy, why would they do it in Pakistan and Malaysia? So see, what can at best be seen as irresponsible behavior gets seen as a conspiracy of Muslims to spread COVID-19 and coronavirus in India. And we all, and I'm sure you know it, we all know, for most people in India, there's no difference between Tablighi Jamaat, the other Jamaatis, and any Muslim. The scapegoating of Tablighi Jamaat was not scapegoating of Tablighi Jamaat. Scapegoating was all Muslims. So what happens, of course, is all Muslims become suspect. And now what they have done is, in people's imagination, if things go bad in India, or coronavirus becomes bad, and we see it, right? And notice, the moment the first round of news coverage of migrant workers' plight came, is when the Tablighi Jamaat news became a big one. So you distract from one and focus on the other. What they're going to do is, long term, all the failures of the government will be blamed on what could we do? Look at these Tablighi Jamaatis. Look at these Muslims. So the polite ones will say Tablighis, but the authentic ones will say Muslims. Muslims did it, right? Now, the reason I said this scapegoating, this is how it functions. So being Muslim in India today is being, as I said, fitting into that stereotype, being scapegoated at every point in time. For everything wrong in India, blame Muslims, right? And whenever there are movements for and moments of resistance, the way it's happened with CA, right? Anti-CA protest, we find every attempt made to divide. So in Delhi, I went to the CA protest in Delhi. Of course, for me, it's there to listen to people, right? And partly because I'm not in this, I know where they can target me for breaking law by going and speaking at protests in India, right? Because of section, 144 and everything. Anyway, so you go there, of course, they're Muslims, but there are many non-Muslims also. They try to divide. You remember, I know in case a lot of Muslim student leaders have been put into prison now, right? All the cases against them. But we are also aware of 1 or 2 queer colleagues, a trans person, I think they were a trans person, or a queer person from Hyderabad or Bangalore, someone who raised the slogan, the one who went to the overseas speech, right? Now, of course, they didn't even let them understand. They were not even allowed to complete the statement. So what happens is, and again, some of you would be aware, many would not. At the Bombay Pride, there was a whole case of queers in favor, queers opposed to CA, right? LGBTQ people opposed to CA, and talking of Sharjit Imam was also speaking of Kashmir and Azadi, and then being demonized by mainstream gay, but also by Hindu nationalists. So what I'm saying is, there is resistance. And my hope comes from the fact still is, there's an awakening of many Muslims, but there's also awakening of other groups in India, Dalits, parts of LGBTQ, and even parts of secularists. So what we need to do, of course, is more of this kind, right? I mean, is reaching out, building solidarity. We'll not agree on 100% everything. And we don't need to agree 100% everything. But what we need to agree on, right, is recognizing where the main threat comes from. The main threat to all of us, be it whether you're practicing Muslim, be it you're a communist, be it you're a queer person, right? And I use the word queer. If you want, again, I can explain why queer, not gay, is why I'm using it. Be it queer, be it you're a woman who wants to be independent and might be Hindu or not Hindu, doesn't matter. Be it you're Dalit, right? And do not want to be patronized. The common enemy remains Hindu national, right? Of course, Brahminical, but that's not the only part. They have a deep fascist agenda, which is largely to exterminate minorities if, and there's a big if minorities do not conform to their image, which is to keep quiet, right? And that's what we are facing. So the way I said, maybe we can discuss that more later, but we are dealing with a real problem. I said, it's still not 1938, so we still have time, because parliament is still functioning to an extent. They have not burned down the parliament the way they burned down Reichstag in Berlin, Germany. They have not done that yet, right? And the international environment, despite the rise of figures such as Trump, Orban, Erdogan, some of you might like Erdogan, sorry, but Erdogan figure is no different from that of Modi in certain contexts, right? Majoritarian, right? Erdogan or whoever. Despite rise of that, the fact of the matter is, at this point in time, it's costly for Hindu nationalists to commit genocide. But we should not wait, therefore relax and say, oh, they're not going to do it. So that's what the ideology is. There is no way, and I'll end with this, there is no way in which Hindu nationalism can be domesticated, transformed, moderated to be made into something genuinely democratic, which would imply respect for all, right? And equality for all as citizens, not as this. There's no way in which it can be done, because Hindu nationalism is fundamental DNA, fundamental identity is based on Hindu supremacism, hatred of and fear of religious minorities, right? So there's only way in which we can manage the situation and is to struggle for better democracy, more democracy that respects the rights of all citizens, including religious minorities, as equals, as citizens, and not as those who are minorities who need protection. On that note, a very long speech. I thought I'll do only 40 minutes. I think I've taken 45. Okay, I'll end here. Thank you. Irfan, your video is, this is off, audio.
Yeah, so thank you, Professor, for this brilliant and insightful speech, and especially the kind of research you have done is very much of importance, and the talk which is based on that, and further theories and experiences right now which is going on. So very, very much thankful for that. And now this is open for this question Q&A. So whoever have a question, please write it down in the chat group, or raise a hand so that I can unmute you, and you can
so in the meantime, okay, because I also can see the chat. So should I start with the question from?
Yeah, sure.
And I'm so sorry for sound clarity to all of you, but I don't need to say sorry. I think Irfan can say sorry about that.
Yeah,
but they're recording, so hopefully that would work, right?
Exactly.
And regarding the book, I keep talking, Hindu National India Political Fear. Just Google for it. I put it. It's online somewhere on online in various places, including academia.edu. Now, Surbi, you're right. I mean, it's a comment, right? No, I would never see myself as knights of the persecutors. I'll avoid it. In fact, and it's very careful. And it becomes relevant, I'll tell you where in particular. Because I have privileges. I have privileges of class and caste both, and gender, right? So it's easy for me to do certain things which might not be easy for you who might inhabit other things. But the way I would say is, I see my role as one of being in solidarity. So I'll give, for instance, the title of the, for instance, Kashmir. I will never say I speak for Kashmir. I cannot speak for Kashmiris. I'm not a Kashmiri, right? Has the host has spotlighted your video for everyone? Okay, yep. I'll never speak for Kashmir. I'll speak with Kashmiris. One, I'll speak about Kashmir, and I will try my best to give platform to Kashmiris, which I have been doing. So similar in this case of religious minorities. I'll not speak for religious minorities, so I'm not being a Muslim. So for not you, but for those who I know on Facebook and someone said, oh, but why is he speaking? By the way, there was also criticism of fraternity movement, I guess, from some saying, why are you inviting a Hindu to speak about being a Muslim, right? So we should clarify, we're not talking being a Muslim, me being a Muslim. We are talking about my work in which what it means, according to me, about being Muslim in that context, right? So you're right. So even in case of, let's say Pakistan or whatever, even if take example Pakistan, you're right, Ahmadis, especially Ahmadis, Baluchis. And if India really cared about religious minorities in other places, they would have cared about Tibetan Buddhists, right? Even Tibetan Buddhists cannot get refuge in India. They still don't get refuge. Delhi High Court judgment was there, but not because of government. Rohingyas, you don't care about Muslims. You don't care about Rohingyas. But what about Tibetan Buddhists? What about Tamil Hindus? Forget Tamil Muslim, Tamil Hindu. So the fact of the matter, we all know it. CA is not about protection of minorities anywhere. CA is about something very basic. CA and coronavirus to an extent helped, but also hinders, because it helps BJP kind of thing, because it stops protests. You saw what happened, right? Shaheen Bagh protest, all protests have ended. And not only India, protests have ended here also on various things. So states are going to misuse their power and prevent any kind of mass protest in the future. So we have to be prepared for that. That's there. But so if protests ended, but it also sort of, because now all the attention on CA has gone, it's Corona. They have got the agenda. So you're right. BJP has never been about religious minorities. And the Baloch, for instance, only time Modi talked of Baloch people was when he had to sort of focus attention again away from Kashmir. And a lot of Modi bhakts on Twitter would say, what about Balochistan? And by the way, because I talk of Kashmir a lot, they'll always say to me, what about Balochistan? I say, well, I've always spoken for Balochistan. Right? I've spoken about Balochistan. What about Tibet? Now, my work, as Irfan pointed out, for 20 years, I've worked on Tibet. So this what about, and the common, by the way, the most favorite what aboutry for Hindu nationalists is, what about Kashmiri Pandits? The same people who did not care about Kashmiri Pandits in 89-90, who did nothing for Kashmiri Pandits then, are now all there to hijack their pain and suffering and use that to brutalize all Kashmiri Muslims. That's what they do. And not only Kashmiri Muslims. And this is what I wrote in Foreign Policy article recently. Again, that's on it's a pinned tweet on my Twitter, in case you are on Twitter, right? I said that, again, Kashmir, what has happened in Kashmir is not targeted at Kashmiris. It's targeted at humiliating all Muslims. Again, I can expand that if you want, how I see the connection with Kashmir Muslim. That's one. Okay. Muttayyib, okay, sorry, Irfan, you are leading it, so you have to tell me what to do.
I will unmute Ammar Ahmed for the first time. He has been raising hands. Okay. So Ammar, please raise your question.
Assalamu alaikum to everyone. I want to say that the situation is more than worse than you describe all in your lecture. I want to share with you my lived experience. I live in front of police station, and there's policemen who mimicking Tabligh Jamaat members, how they pray and how they walk, how they relate their lives with the world, and they mimicking all the time and saying Islamophobic comments. And I am not hopeful about Dalit politics and Dalit representations, because all the Dalit politics, all the Dalit Ambedkar insightful educations are on paper. It's not on the mind of Dalits. I feel that I live with my neighboring more than 1,000 Jhuggis of Dalits, and I feel that they are more colonized than Brahmins and other forward classes. I want to ask.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I say I will never ever deny your experience, right? Because it comes from your experience. And one, you're right about police. What's happening is, there are many examples of how police have been deeply Islamophobic, right? Now, many of you young, so you would not know, because I might be the oldest one here, right? So in 1980s and early 90s, there used to be these films, Hindi films, when they still used to show police as cruel. And Amitabh Bachchan used to be this poor person's hero, right? Angry young man is what they called him, right? We live in different era, not now, but in that, now the era is Amitabh Bachchan as a patriarch, rich patriarch based in London and doing things. Always a Savarna patriarch. At that time, he was an angry young man, but still a Savarna. Right? At that point in time, they would show police as cruel, and a lot of violence of police was against Muslims, but largely Dalit and tribal women, and also Dalit and tribal men. That has not disappeared by the way. What's happening now is, so violence against Muslims and prejudice against Muslims was high even then. But the new respectability, so I agree with you, the new respectability that, and the license that these cops have now did not always exist. So, how example? Now, my mother passed away 2 years ago. So last year we had a Barsi. Barsi is after 1 year, the prayer and everything. I was at that. Imagine now, and I'm very public about my politics and everything. So if I have relatives who are Islamophobic, they'll keep quiet because they know I will not listen to them. The polite way is just don't talk. A cop, there's around 500 people. A cop comes to me. A cop is a senior, sort of SP kind of person, right? Says, "Sir, you're talking of this, but what about Muslims? They do this. Very the typical things which Hindu nationals do." I said, by the way, everyone does what you said they do. That there might be extremists, there might be this, and why are you bothering me? Now, I had a family friend who was an ex-DGP, so senior guy, Hindu background, but who is a genuine secularist, let me put it that way. He just said that, look, all communities have this problem, and why did you never say it until now, until BJP has come to power? So how come you suddenly start seeing Muslims as a problem? And he actually spoke back against his own superior, who was ex-DGP. Now, why do I highlight? I highlight it because what's happening is Islamophobia is becoming rampant. The cops of the kind you mentioned, but also senior cops who want to curry favors with Amit Shah and everyone else around them, will adopt even more Islamophobia in order to prove to the masters that they're going to be loyal. So at this point in time in Delhi, when you look at Delhi police and how they behave with these anti-CA protests, it's not that all, I know a certain cops, not all cops are anti-Muslim. Some cops are, or many cops are maybe, right? But those who are not anti-Muslim have to go quiet because they know that if they defend Muslims, they will be transferred. So see what's happening. So I would say the majority community is being divided between those who are outright Hindu nationalist, Islamophobic, and they're the loud ones, and those who might not be, and they have to go quiet. Right? So that's what's happening. But you're right, and it's extending, it's expanding, it is becoming normal. Now, look, if the Prime Minister of the country says, we know who is protesting by the clothes, and we know they mean Muslims. If the Prime Minister says it, if the Home Minister says, ye tukre gang and JNU, and hum inko khatam karenge 2 weeks, why are we surprised that JNU gets attacked or HCU gets attacked or whatever? Right? So the respectability for hate politics comes from the top. And I said, never, not that you would do it because you have experience, but I would also say to those who are not Muslims, who are Hindu and whatever, right? Never ever underestimate how common sense in India is being shifted in that hate direction. Where it becomes very normal for people to make fun of Tabligis. It becomes very normal for people to make fun of Muslims. And that's what's happening. Regarding Dalit, again, and this is why I think we need to distinguish between Dalit politics, Ambedkarite politics, because they're slightly different. And I have no doubt that a number of Dalits have been, or some of them have been Hinduized. But still, when I look at the voting pattern, right, they might be Islamophobic. The ways in which many Muslims are, by the way, casteist, right? I mean, So I'm sure it's not an ideal situation. But what's happening, of course, is Hindutva has invested heavily in transforming the common sense of both Dalits and Adivasis and turning them against Muslims and Christians, by the way. So in case of Jharkhand, where I come from, the key defenders of Adivasi rights used to be Christians, the missionaries. And now you have got a strong strand of Adivasi, not majority, but strong strand, and they get a lot of money. who are anti-Christian. Because now anti-Christian and also anti-Naxal. And then they get confused. So what I would say is, I understand the despair. I'll use the word despair. I'm sorry about that. But do we have an option? So if you have to work within India with groups that will be in solidarity with you, it's more likely is my idea, that you can appeal to the oppressed status of Dalits than to Ambanis or Adani. I'm not that you'll speak to Ambani, Adani, unless you are someone related, right? So I would still say that we still have hope. So this is where I think, if you look at Dalit movement, you have divide between the Ambedkarites and then the others. And this is what, in a way, one has to work upon. And this is, I mean, okay, going back HCU. And when I came to HCU to speak to you, before that I had met Rohit. My first visit to HCU was when Rohit Vemula and 4 others were protesting. I had met Rohit in January, and after five days, I remember he had committed suicide. And I remember speaking to him briefly, but remember speaking to them, largely they were upset with ASA, right? ASA was the organization at that point in time. Because at that point in time, ASA was trying its best to combine Dalit part of left, not all, but part of left, and part of Muslim Students Association, right? And that becomes really that generates anxiety amongst the Hindu nationalists. Yeah, sorry, I'll be brief next time. Yeah.
I'll mute Shanawaz. Shanawaz, you can talk now.
Hi, Dibyesh. Thank you for such an insightful lecture. I have a question. Against this nationalistic agenda, could there be any consolidated form of resistance in your future, and what could be the possible nature of that resistance? Because I don't know much about the European 1930 history and the neighborhood at that point of time, but currently in South Asia, we see there is a Pakistan on the borders, Bangladesh, and other states which are mostly Muslim. So don't you think that there could be a resistance in possible future, and that can be a consolidated form of resistance in rest of the India? And already Kashmir is in the resistance mode. What do you think about that?
Okay, the European history, we know what happened. We know what happened after 1934-35, right? What happened was, of course, 1939, 40, 41, Holocaust. So European history is a very bad. We wouldn't want to go into that European history, because that would imply largely. It won't be repeated. It won't be repeated in the world wars, okay, but it might be repeated in genocide. That's the fact. Now, the way I see it, frankly, the role of Pakistan or Bangladesh have no role to play. They have no role to play except negative role. And the negative role would be, for instance, the moment you see it, right? Imran Khan starts talking of rights of, I'll come to Kashmir later. Because at least in case of Kashmir, Pakistan has some say, right? Because it's a dispute and whatever, right? But in case of Indian Muslims, they have no local standard. So they'll say, what about Kashmir Indian Muslims? Look, they're suffering. And many Indians can legitimately say, what about minorities in Pakistan? They're suffering. So only way in which Pakistan will have a credible voice is actually if it becomes genuinely equal for all religious minorities, which it's not. And given the constitution, which prohibits anyone except Muslims to become the top leader. Remember, in India, at least in the name, you can become a Muslim or Christian can become a president. In Pakistan, you cannot even become a president, right? So that's a big problem. And second, the problem of Indian Muslims at this point in time, look, no point going back to history, what happened 50, 60 years ago, in the sense of, can we undo it? We can't. We can only learn from history. The challenges that Indian Muslims in India face is challenge now of survival, right? Survival with dignity. And survival is connected to genocide, but dignity is also connected to democracy. That how can Muslims in India and Christians in India live as equals with dignity? Of course. And remember, Muslims in India are all kinds of Muslims. The difference between some in Kerala and some in Bihar is bigger than the difference between Christians and Hindus in Kerala and the Muslims, right? So we are talking of 100 other things. So there's no category Indian Muslim that's a uniform category. We also have to bear in mind. So the resistance for me is one which is based on, and this is why I think, this is why you saw how anti-CA protests led to a crisis amongst Hindu nationalists. Led to a situation where PM, Home Minister, the media, all of them went into that mode and kept criticizing, when frankly, look, BJP is strong. They can get away with anything at this point in time, right? In the court, in the parliament. So they did not need to demonize. They could just ignore anti-CA protest. They did not ignore anti-CA protest because they could see what anti-CA protest was doing was bringing out Muslims, speaking as Indians, right? I mean, okay. And also others who were supporting. So that's the kind of resistance. This is where I think, I would say, believers of democracy in India should be thankful to and grateful to many Muslims of India who took on the leadership of anti-CA protest. So if Corona had not happened, and if something really, I mean, the very fact that, remember they said, we are not going to have NRC for the country at one point in time. They did simply say it because, of course, of the pressures because of CA. So what I would say is resistance never give up on democratic elections. Losing election is one way. So help them lose election somehow, right? Or help them lose election. Sorry, make them lose election. So it's important to do that. We cannot get out of electoral democracy. That's important. Second is not get out. Fine. I mean, you're suffering discrimination, fight back. Through words, through writings, through speeches, by building solidarity, appealing to common interests, right? Kashmir is a very different context. I would not connect the Kashmiri struggle, which is for self-determination, with the struggle of Indian Muslims, even though in the mind of Hindu nationalists, they're the same. They're the same because according to them, all Muslims are enemies, right? And potential separatists. Kashmiris are separatists, according to them, and Indians are potential separatists. But I said, the moment Indian Muslims start even thinking, let's work with Muslim majority countries, be Turkey, Pakistan, that, then it in a way fits into the Hindu nationalist agenda, which you will say that, look, they're anti-national. So that's, I know it's not ideal. So, okay, think of a Spanish Civil, I'll give you a Spanish Civil War took place in 1930s in Europe, where on one side within the Civil War were the fascists, and then the other side where the democracy left, communist socialists, right? And the fascists won. But you had people from all parts of Europe coming and joining. Even Nehru had written in favor of the socialists then, right? But that kind of thing was civil war. We're not in a civil war right now. We're simply talking of how resistance can function in India, which involves Muslims, involves Dalits, not all Dalits, but at least Dalits who are Ambedkarites and Dalits who are opposed to the national agenda. Basically, the resistance of those who believe in the simple fact that no human being should be dehumanized. No human being should be targeted to being put into prison because of their identity. I think that's the struggle. By the way, I have no answer. So I don't have an answer. All I can say is what is not the answer. So solidarity or working, or even thinking of working with Muslim majority countries is not at all, I would say, a good idea.
Mutayyab, you can speak now.
Yes, thanks. Thank you for your lecture. It was a really insightful lecture. However, I have two questions, sir. My first question is that you talked about the Hindutva ideology demonizing people, calling them Pakistanis. At the same time, you made a comment that about the ideology of Pakistan, where you said that Jinnah's ideology was that the rights of Muslims can only be secured in a Muslim majority country, where even if the Hindus, the Christians, the queers may they be persecuted, that's not an issue. However, sir, when you create an analogy between Jinnah's ideology of Pakistan and the Hindutva ideology, what we miss is, in my opinion, and you may correct me if I'm wrong, that while Jinnah's ideology is about protecting rights of one community, which he sees won't be protected in a united India, on the other hand, the Hindutva ideology is superiority of one race over all the other races, superiority of the Brahman class over all the other classes, and on the bottom of that ladder are the Muslims. So many people hold the view that it was the state's vocabulary to demonize Pakistan and demonized the Hindutva ideology in just after independence, that they created these equals. So I'd like your comment on that. And my second question is about creating fault lines in Hindutva. We know that there is a caste system there, and they don't see each other as equals. The Brahmin class doesn't see the Dalits as equals. Now, I'd like to bring to your notice an incident. It was the elections of 2017, and I had a Dalit friend, the elections of 2017 in UP. We used to have discussions, and I asked him, who are you going to vote? And he told me BJP. But after a few days, he comes back to me and tells me that no, I'll now be voting for BSP because a key BJP candidate made some comments about Mayawati. So the underlying thing which can unite them is their honor and dignity. But honor and dignity doesn't get translated into the Dalit masses. They probably still hold the view that as long as reservation is there, they have a certain privilege that Muslims don't. These are two of my questions.
Thank you so much. I'll start with the second
So
one.
how
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll start. Thanks so much for this. The caste question. Let's come back to the caste question. Right. Okay. Start my video. I think I've disappeared or what? Yeah, I'm back. Right. Yep. So the caste question first. You're right. Look, when we talk of Dalit, Muslim, in Indian context, we are dealing with, what do I say? We're dealing with tens of millions of people, right? I mean, so one, we have to remember that my experience, your experience might not be the general experience, because we're talking about a huge population, and even Ambedkarite ideology are different, Muslim ideologies are very different. We all know it, right? So we're dealing with immense thing. You're right. If there is a Dalit consciousness, and frankly, BSP has played a very crucial role in that, in creating that consciousness that, look, you are Dalit, and that's why it's Dalit term, not Harijan or anything else. The Dalit, and you've been suppressed, and you have to assert yourself. The only way to assert yourself, because you can't assert yourself socio-economically because you are being marginalized, only way to assert is politically through elections. And partly by making sure reservations there, right? So that's there, but it's largely through elections. So Dalits have managed, at least in North India, to mobilize themselves around elections. But in places where BSP is not powerful, we see that doesn't happen. Places like, not Bihar, but Jharkhand and other places. That's the problem they face. So not all of them are Ambedkarites. Ambedkar might be idolized. You worship Ambedkar. So Ambedkar becomes like God, but you don't follow Ambedkar's ideology, which was very about constitution, equality and everything, right? Now that's there. So in terms of your rights, so the focus is on themselves. And it is a fact that in parts of UP, Dalits were discriminated against and exploited not only by Savarna Hindus, but also by Savarna Muslims, right? So that memory is also there. So there are various histories. The way I would say is, way out therefore is more effort on part of Dalit Muslim, because you can be both also, right? Dalit Muslims, activists, intellectuals, to speak to each other, know about each other's struggle, and see what can be done. I'm not saying there'll be a rainbow coalition, that we all can be singing, dancing, happy together and fight. I'm not saying that, but at least let's try to reduce the antagonism that might exist, because who benefits from that antagonism? BJP, right? And to an extent in the past Congress. Now the first question, so let me clarify. When I said that, to an extent, Jinnah, is what I said, to an extent, Jinnah's ideology is something similar to Hindu nationalist ideology. So let me correct myself. You're right. So the difference is, one ideology, commonality is Hindu Muslims are different nations. And possibly they can't live together. Right? That's a commonality. But the difference is, Jinnah's ideology, therefore, is that you create, first you want more rights, but at least by the end of it, you create a state to protect the Muslim nation. Right? Muslims who are nation, who are different, distinct nations. You do that. And the idea is not driven by hatred of Hindus. It's not driven by hatred of Christians. It's for the protection of Muslims. On the other hand, you're right that Hindu national ideology is not based on protection. Well, it is to an extent. So Hindu nationals claim that they are the victims. So in my own work, and that again you can go and check, someone asked what's the name of the book. It's called Hindu Nationalism in India and Politics of Fear. Actually, Hindu nationalists see themselves as victims. They believe that they're victimized by all the four enemies, which I mentioned, Muslim, Christian, secularists, communists. And therefore, we need a Hindu nation to protect ourselves. So their ideology is one way they would say, we need a Hindu nation or India to become Hindu nation because Muslims are so many nations, we have no nation, we need a nation. So it stems again from this idea that we have to protect our time. But in the end, I will not still, you're right. I mean, so I usually would not talk of Jinnah ideology because I'm not interested in Jinnah ideology, right? I'm more interested in what today would be Pakistan studies kind of curriculum. What is the idea of Pakistan today? And ideology of Pakistan today is not Jinnah ideology. What Pakistan today has done is also something similar to what India has done with Gandhi and Nehru. With all the flaws, they'll take caricature of Gandhi and use them partially. So in case of Pakistan also, if you look at Jinnah, Jinnah had said various things, including the fact that all religious minorities should live as equals, right? He said that. But then what Pakistan ideology becomes over time is quite different. So the way we have to understand it, so I'm not interested in, frankly, saying, oh, because Pakistan is like that, therefore Hindu nationalists are correct. My question is, I'm not even also a liberal Hindu who would say, oh, look at India, India is becoming Pakistan, that's somehow bad. So you're right. The way in which Indian secular state functioned post-50s was by portraying Hindu nationalists and Muslim nationalists, who according to them create Pakistan as two bad forces and the secular state as the balancer, right? That's what you were saying, that basically they portrayed themselves as a secular middle vis-a-vis Hindu nationalists and Pakistan nationalists. Today we are talking about the topic was not broadly national, it was Muslims in India. So the way I would say therefore is that the answer, so I'm not saying that they're similar, okay, therefore I should correct myself. I'm not saying that they're the same. I said they have similarities, that idea, but that's not the important point. So if that distracts from attention, let's distract from the attention. For me, beyond the point, if you focus on India, it does not matter what Pakistan does to its minorities or not does to minority. Pakistan might become an ideal place, or Pakistan might become a horrible place. Bad for Pakistanis, right? Or good for Pakistanis. But how does that have any impact? In fact, Pakistan name and Pakistan idea should not even be part of the struggle within India of how democracy should function. And this obsession, frankly, that Hindu nationalists have with Pakistan is a pathological one. It's a pathological one because you can't explain that through anything. India is a strong state. It's a very powerful state. When it wants, it can crush all of us easily. I mean, it can. I have no doubt as a state. That state is largely become more and more Hinduized and more Hindu nationalist and possibly moving in direction of fascism. It doesn't need Pakistan, but the reason it brings Pakistan is to make Muslims and genuine secularists defensive. And they bring Pakistan because they will put you on defensive or me on defensive. Oh, you're not Pakistan. Oh, but no, what about Pakistan? The fact of the matter is, it is an ideal, and this is where I would say that Jinnah's ideology was not an exterminationist ideology, right? And that I think it was not extermination ideology. It ended up becoming a recipe for one where Muslims are seen as superior. And you'd know, and my Pakistani friends would tell me that the kind of textbooks they have, the portrayal of religious minorities largely of Hindus as pro-India, Hindus as inferior, Hindus as cow worship, Hindus as cow piss drinking, and the kind of supremacism which I find amongst Pakistani Sunni Muslim chauvinists is no different from the chauvinism of Hindu nationalism. But the fact that they're chauvinists doesn't imply that we can't criticize. So it's a long answer, but I would agree. We're not sure because Jinnah was not Modi. Jinnah was not an exterminationist. Modi, RSS are exterminationists. So I would distinguish that. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions coming in, and
okay. Remind me. You can just raise your hand. I'll then stop my answer very quickly.
Okay. No. So I'll read out some questions which are there in the comments right now. So I have sent you 2 questions over there. One is from Khairun Nisa from Kashmir. And her question is about what is your opinion on minority within the minority? And secondly, how do you see communities like Ahmadis, Shias, and the women's at the receiving end of Islamophobia that probably has doubled their burdens? Also, if you could elaborate upon sectarianism and desectarianism. Yeah.
Okay, I can see that comment. Okay, so fine. Then, because there's so many questions. By the way, I might not be able to answer all the questions, so apologies in this one. So I'll answer some of them. Look, this is why I said our interest should not only be about protection of Muslims because you are Muslim or I'm Muslim, right? Or whatever, right? Our question should be against the ideology that makes us vulnerable. So you're right. If minority within minorities experience a lot of oppression, then that has to be spoken about too. So I do not believe that, for instance, let's say, I'm just assuming that there's in UK context, Hindus are minority, Muslims are minority, Black people are minority, all kinds of minorities exist, but we also have problems within our own communities. So should we not talk of those problems? I believe that we need to talk of those problems also. So I do not believe that we see Muslims or Christians or Hindus or whatever as distinct category, a fixed category, and somehow we are ideal victims. But the fact that there's so many problems, let's say in this case, amongst within Muslims, is no excuse and should not be allowed to become an excuse for any kind of discrimination and genocide, right? So the idea is one need not be an ideal minority in order to not have genocide against them. So in this case, Indian Muslims, and I'm talking Indian Muslims in particular, do not need to be the most perfect kind of pro-democracy, right? Who respect rights of all women, all queers, all minorities, all everything, in order to, for us as outsiders, they said, now we will listen to Muslims. So I guess it's an intersectional struggle. So the key concept that's relevant for all of us, and we need to read more, and I think you need to read more also, is, and it comes from largely Black studies in US, is of intersectionality. The oppression you experience is intersectional. You might experience oppression because you're a Muslim woman and lesbian, all three together. Or you might experience because you're in this case, a Black Muslim man or Black Christian man. Or you might experience because you're Ahmadi. That's it, right? An Ahmadi woman. So you have double, triple. So because oppression and discriminations are intersectional, it's important that even resistance that's built up is also intersectional. That's what I would say. In terms of, yes, I would deliberate section. Yeah, so should I go through the comments and just answer what I can?
Yeah, the question. I think we can take this final question and wind up the session because it is very late here. So there is a question from Adil. If you can read it out, I will also read it out. How would you deal or engage with the idea of India, the territorial and mythology? The biggest problems arise from there. The caste problem is entrenched with the idea. The Kashmir issue is correlated related to it. The CA also, in some ways, is connected with the idea of India extended to Akhand Bharat. The anti-Muslim wave also has genesis in this very idea. So how does anyone engage in politics that are beyond this idea and deconstruction?
Yeah, I see that. I can see that.
Sure.
Thank you so much for sending that. I saw it both. So you're right. I mean, my personal ideology, and I use that word, queer anarchist. So that's my personal idea. It's both queer and anarchist, so it's connected. So there's a fundamental problem in the very idea of nation, and particularly nation state. Now, of course, nations that are stateless, like Palestinian or Tibetan or Uyghur or Kashmiri, you would still find liberationist aspect there, right? You need to liberate freedom. But once those nations become state, be it China, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, whatever, you see that liberation idea disappears, it becomes a consolidating idea. And this is the problem with idea of nationalism, that the moment it shifts from being a movement, anti-colonial kind of movement, to being a statist movement, it becomes very conservative, it becomes oppressive, it becomes potentially majoritarian. until and unless there's a genuine democratic struggle. And I say genuine democratic struggle. I'm not saying that there's democracy anywhere, by the way. I'm not saying that Sweden is a full democracy. There is no full democracy anywhere, but there are struggles for democracy, right? So the kind of things you can say in India and get away with it if you're majority, you can't say in England and get away with it to an extent. To an extent, it might change. Right now, of course, the kind of things Trump says, let's not talk of it, right? So I'll not bring Trump and US here. But we have to bear in mind that difference. So coming back to the idea of India, there is a fundamental problem with idea of India because that idea of India is a nation statist concept. And in that sense, the problem is not with the idea of India only. The problem is with the idea of any nation, a territorial nation. So Kashmir thing. And I have said this in the past also occasionally. Kashmir is integral part of India, right? So the idea means, that idea implies without Kashmir, India cannot survive. Kashmir is also the crown of Mother India, right? The head of Mother India. So if you somehow remove Kashmir, you chop off the head of Mother India, which you should not do, right? I mean, that's how it is. It becomes, and you could see how personal it becomes for people. How can you take off the head or crown of your mother kind of thing? So this is how idea functions. The fact of the matter is, between August 1947 and until India occupied Kashmir, or if you believe that India took over Kashmir, whatever, but India controlled Kashmir, you had weeks when Kashmir was not part of India. Now, would Hindu nationals therefore say, and not Hindu, would Indian nationals say that therefore Kashmir's integral part means India was not complete? Or if India was complete, then why do we need Kashmir? So we have to understand that this idea of India, as you pointed out, is an idea of nation state, which is connected to the idea of property. Kashmir is a property. Kashmir is property. So it belongs to us. The doodh mangoge, kheer denge, Kashmir mangoge, cheer denge, which implies that if you ask for milk, we will give you a porridge or whatever. Kheer, I don't know what kheer is in English, but if you ask for Kashmir, we are going to tear you apart, right? So this kind of visceral, emotional, violent moralizing is possible because Kashmir is seen as a property. So a colleague of mine, some of you may know her, Natasha Kaul, she, apart from other things, she wrote an article on how Kashmir is a property. So this is not a property, it's a male property, right? I'll give you what's his name? Shah Rukh Khan. 90s movie, again, some of you may not have watched. He talked of, tu haan kar ya na kar, tu hai meri kiran. So whether you say yes or no, you are my kiran. So this patriarchal proprietorship, that whether a girl likes it or not, you are belong to me. That's what India's position is, right? So I would say yes, to an extent, that's a problem. Now, how to challenge? It's a big challenge. I don't know. As for me, I say, let's all become queer anarchists. If you can't, at least try to mitigate it within democracy, right? And that's a struggle for better democracy. That's what I would say. One final thing I saw here was, as British Indian Muslim born here, what can we do? I think what you can do, and we need to speak, first is not be quiet. We should not go quiet. We should not go quiet because we don't know, in which case let's learn. We should not go quiet because people say, oh, you are Muslim, so why support Muslims? Support minority rights. In this case, Muslims India. Right? Support Uyghur Muslims in case of China, right? So it's very important that we continue to do it because India still bothers and cares about what international criticism comes. So this is very important that we do not be quiet. We build solidarity with each other. We speak to each other. I said we don't need to agree with each other all the time, but let's remember that only actor who benefits from dividing Muslims among themselves, Muslims from Christians, Christians among themselves, then Muslims from Dalits, and Dalits from Adivasis, and Adivasis from LGBTQ, LGBTQ from, whatever, all these divisions, even from secularists, frankly speaking, right? The only actor in India today who benefits from that is essentially the Sanghis, who are the Hindu nationalists, and they are those who are not only enemies of one or the other, though Muslims are the favorite enemy right now, they're the enemies of the very idea of humanity, very idea of existence of human beings as equal. And therefore, the only way to challenge that is to build intersectional solidarity and work with each other.
And Afnan, can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so hi Dibyesh, thanks for the talk. So actually, I wanted to ask the first question regarding Jinnah only, but which has already been dealt with. So another question that I want to point out is that is it possible to talk about this problem in just the dichotomy of majority and minority, and also how is it possible to talk about the discrimination that is faced by Muslims in a localized context? As in, of course, I understand the title of the talk is about Indian Muslims and the discrimination against them, but isn't it, if we are talking about just in a context of Hindu majoritarianism and the minority Muslims, uh, I think it invisibilizes the larger question of the deep-rooted Islamophobia, which is already which is also racialized. Some scholars argue that it's not a racial category, but there are other scholars like Ramon Grossfugel and all, who talks about it as a racialized category, and how this hatred comes from rather also an epistemological construction that has been happening. And we also know that how the laws in India have been, like UAPA, POD, and all these laws have been specifically targeted to put the Muslim youth who have been active or who speak about their dignity behind bars. And also, one more example that I would like to point out is that the epistemologically, the Muslim, as people like Ansari talks about, how the category of Muslim itself is an excess to the idea of nation state, the idea of Indian nation state. So uh, recently, when I came across this tweet, you might have seen it. This tweet in which Sangis, it's not only Sangis. Actually, there is the category of Hindu atheist, Hindu secular, and all these people. With regard to the case of Safura Zargar, there was a comment in which one person said that the Shaheen Bagh bastard is going to be born. That's about an yet to be born Muslim child. He hasn't, he or she or whoever that, it hasn't not even come out to the world, but still within the womb, that person is discriminated. So uh, wouldn't it be I think it's uh, talking about it in a localized context, doesn't it invisibilize the larger nature of Islamophobia in a global context? If you could.
Thank you so much. And all these are very important examples, right? You're right. There is a global Islamophobia, but all these global Islamophobia, they feed upon each other, right? So Hindu nationalists learn from the Swedish guy, Anders Breivik, Norway, who mass killer. Anders Breivik went and killed around 60 kids and the teachers in Norway because he hated multiculturalism. He did not kill Muslims, right? But he killed white people like himself because he felt that Norway is becoming excessively multicultural and therefore inviting outsiders. But he was a strong supporter of Hindu nationalists. So you're right. There's global Islamophobia. There's also learning from each other and saying, oh, look, Muslims are not only a problem for us, they're also a problem for X, Y, and Z. But when I did, and that's more now than 20 years ago. So when I did research 10 years ago, and this is when BJP had lost election, the general election 2004, this 2005, 6, this after Gujarat and everything. I was surprised. So I was expecting a lot more of global. Frankly, most people, and I'm talking, by the way, what's the name? Nagpur, Haridwar, Ayodhya, Bombay, Delhi, and Gujarat, Ahmedabad, and few other places. Right? Not South, but North India and Central India. 99% of it, the talk was about same stories, same conspiracies, the love jihad conspiracy, by the way. They talked of love jihad then, right? And they were creating that as an imagined construct because it's imaginary love jihad, but they were creating it. They all talked of it as if it's local. And they talk of nation. They would occasionally say, कि मुसलमान तो होते ही ऐसे, वो वहां भी परेशानी करते हैं. So these Muslims are problem, they also do it there. So what I would think it says, while the Twitter Hindutva people, be it Hindu liberal or Hindu atheist or Hindu nationalist, right? Those who are Islamophobic. While Twitteratis are more in tune with the global Islamophobia, the bigger problem lies is amongst the people on ground in India who are becoming more and more, and it's not, they are not, but they become even more and more Islamophobic and only Islamophobic. See, it's one thing to say, oh, Muslims are different, we don't eat in the same plate, right? Caste, religion, everything comes separate. And secondly, we can't eat with them and we're going to kill them. So I sometimes find that in villages where there is not Islamophobia, but there are discriminations, right? Or there's distancing in villages. That's not as lethal as urban, educated, Hindu background nationalist people who will eat with Muslims. They have no problem. They'll eat beef if they have to. They'll interact with Muslims, but they'll also not mind if Muslims get exterminated. So I would say there's a difference there. But now regarding racialization, coming back to the CA thing, which meant, see, you saw how, of course, they target Muslims, especially the educated Muslims, because according to them, the stereotype of the Muslim is, remember, the uneducated, illiterate masses. So now if you have Muslim young people who are vocal, who are challenging, and you're using the right language, right? And they're not falling into the trap of being said by the Hindu nationalists, they become the enemy. That's why they're put into prison. Of course, the target in this case, and for me, someone like me, imagine someone abuses me as, oh, is chakka, right? Or hijra, or whatever. Doesn't make any difference. Because yes, I'm chakka, I'm hijra, so what? I'm not hijra, but I wouldn't mind it now. But in the past, I would, right? So I get upset. So in this case, they think that by calling her names, by using the word bastard, right? Somehow it's connected to morality. It's not. Let's say, for me, okay, let me be very blunt. Let's say a woman is unmarried, is having an affair, has a baby, is political. How does it make any difference whether she's married or not married? It becomes only an abuse if you see that as a problem. But why are they doing it? They're doing it because they know that in Indian context broadly, regardless of religion, these things are extra hurtful. So they will do it. Now, how to counter that? Frankly, the only way to counter in Twitter is to block them, frankly. But I can block them. You can't block them from real life. I just wish real life was as easy as Twitter. I would just block everyone. But we can't. But no, coming back on a serious, very serious point, I agree with you. All of this feeds. So Islamophobia at global level, Islamophobia at national level, Islamophobia at local level, all of them feed upon each other. I'll have to end very, in 10 minutes, if not possible, because I'm getting a message from a colleague. Any urgent question?
No, there are no more questions, and this will be the end of the question answer session. And yeah, is there anything?
I will just say, let me read. So that's still cops. Yeah, you're right. Look, when I said that cops are good, I'm not trying to justify cops. I think all cops are, okay, you can't say, I'll say it. As an anarchist, all cops are rats. When I say rats, okay, rats are quite good. I don't mean to demonize rats. You know what I mean. Never trust a rat. Now, cops are. Have you seen what's that Money Heist TV series? First, I have taken a screenshot, maybe I'll share it, where it says, cops never trust a cop, right? And anyway, as anarchists, we never trust cops. So we might like individual cops, we might have family members of cops, we never trust cops. So as a cop, as system, I wouldn't, right? In this case, what he said is, look, state is draconian. States are oppressive, regardless of the nature of the state. I mean, regardless of the communist state of the China kind, so-called secular, whatever in India kind, or secular of UK kind, or monarchy of Saudi Arabia kind, whatever, right? States are oppressive. States have immense power. Where the risk, of course, is where those states are hijacked by or controlled by certain ideology that's extremely dehumanizing and does not need minorities to be in power, does not need a minority. So Hindu nationalism is that ideology, right? So the way I would say is, whether cops are good does not protect Muslims in general. Some good cops might protect some of us, right? Or you or whatever. But in general, the system is a problem. But one thing I have still a view that if India, for some reason, today has a strong, powerful, genuinely secular left-wing government, genuinely secular left, which is not Islamophobic, by the way. So I'm not talking about the left you have in India, but no, genuinely secular left government, you will find that half of these cops will start talking of Marx. One thing I've learned about Indian bureaucracy, particularly higher bureaucracy, by the way, is they'll turn left if left is in power, they'll center, and they'll turn right if right is in power. They're opportunists. So the question is, what can we do to make sure that state is not permanently captured by these people? That's where elections become relevant. And one thing you said, who do you think lead the movement? Whether Muslim identity, someone, I think Rijas had written a question. Look, I'm not into leadership. As you can see, when I say queer anarchist, we'll never be leaders. So I think when you might not know, in 1917, when Russian Revolution took place, right? And I talked of this, by the way, even in case of Iran, 1979, one of the first victims of feminists and whatever, but were also anarchists. There were anarchists there. Now, in Russian Revolution, anarchists and Bolsheviks, the communists, fought the revolution together. And between 1917 November and 1918 April, apart from the right wing, the people who were put into prison and killed by the communists were the anarchists. Because anarchists do not believe in concentration of power. So as an anarchist, if you ask me the question, I would not say who should lead the movement. For me, leaders are, well, we do need leaders, I have no doubt. But leaders should not be eulogized. It should not become like, oh, we need a savior. There are no saviors. Sorry, but I can say that. There are no saviors in this world. Might be another world if you believe in it, but in this world, they will be, in the world, in everyday political world, there are no saviors. So the only thing we can do is we save ourselves or save each other. And the best way to save each other is work together. And also in this case, I'm not someone who believes that you need to dilute your Muslim identity in order to fit. One can have Muslim identity, one, like you saw, right? I'm not diluting my queer identity just because you're of whatever movement, right? I won't. And you saw, the fact that I think Jesse knew it last time also, that I said, look, if I have to dilute my identity in order to be in solidarity, then there's something wrong in my solidarity and something wrong in your movement, isn't it? So we need to be assertive of ourselves, but also humble enough to recognize that you're also different and we're also in this together, and then therefore somehow come together and fight together. Okay. On that note, I think we should end because I really need to go and make a call now.
Sure. So,
Alan, and aside, one or two of you, I'm fighting an election within my university. It's the first time I'm fighting an election. Okay. So, and the only non-white person in the entire university to even stand for election.
Okay.
And it's interesting to observe the ways in which, despite all the privileges you'd think I'd have in other contexts, in this context, it becomes odd where, so long as I tick box, right? LGBTQ, yes. Brown person, black person, brown, black, excellent. But the moment you become vocal and you raise your voice and you say, I'm not a tick box person, which I do always say, I'm not a tick box person. And you could see the liberal facade going away. So I'm experiencing that, but let's see. I'm still hopeful. Thank you so much, by the way, for this.
Yeah, thank you, Dibyesh, for this very much enlightening talk. And the Q&A session was very long, and everybody had.
Enjoyed it. I like it so.
Yeah, that was very nice of you, and thank you very much. And yeah, I still remember the days when you came to HCU and the talk of Islamophobia. I remember that, and that was very nice. And this is the second time we are meeting. And yeah, again in HCU, that is very great to get a chance. And one more thing I'll mention in the last is that the image of a Muslim in India has shifted from the Gujarat program, where Ansari was holding his hands,
yeah.
And then moved towards the image of Zargar and Aisha Ranna right now,
yeah.
where the anti-CAA protest is there. So that is how being Muslim is transcending from one point to another. And we hope that will become much more better in the coming days. The protests of CAA and every other movements in India has not ended. It has just take a pause, and we will come back stronger and with every solidarities. Yeah.
No, and you know, I don't need to say that I have solid with you. There's no doubt. Look, Corona thing, okay, it's a big crisis, but come and go. But the struggle for dignity, freedom, equality, justice is a long one. We might not get it in my lifetime. Okay, maybe hopefully you'll get it in your lifetime, but not my lifetime, right? Doesn't matter. But unless we struggle, we are not going to get it. So I will always say that we might be sinking or getting the feeling of sinking. But okay, another example. 6 months ago, could you even have thought of coronavirus? Could you have thought of this kind of lockdown, the global? Never, right? We saw Contagion, that film, but it's okay, it's a film. You wouldn't have. Now it's there. So if this can happen, anything can happen, which implies that if we are moving in that direction, which looks, and I'm very pessimistic, that fascism, something might happen. Who knows what happens? But you're right. We need to keep fighting for equality, justice, not give up the fight, and never. Someone can control our body, but they can't control our mind or hopes. They can control mind maybe, but they can't control our dreams and hope. So dream of equality, freedom, justice, dignity is a dream that we all share, and we have to keep fighting. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone. By the way, you can call, if you want to call me Dibyesh, that's best. If you are so much into respect, call me Professor, that's also fine. I've got used to it. But don't call me Sir, or don't call me Sir G. Never Sir G, or not Sir. Sir G reminds me of these ZTV series. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
We'll be uploading this video in the YouTube channel, and the link will be shared. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks.